This podcast is designed for those of you who may be considering running for election to Bellingen Shire Council. My name is Monica Kelly, and after working in and with local government for over 20 years, I've observed that there's nothing like being a councillor. I mean that literally. There is no training ground for how to be a councillor. It's a learn-on-the-job appointment done best by passionate people. Local government is the most direct form of community representation in Australia, and because of its coal-face nature, you'll find enormous rewards equalled by unusual challenges. Listen further to hear from like-minded individuals who are planning to put their hands up on December 4 and say, "Pick me."
How do you see your role as Mayoral Councillor, and how do you think you would best achieve your goals?
Well, when I consider the role of Mayoral Councillor, I think of the Bellingen Shire as an organisation, and the councillors are the board of directors of that organisation, and the mayor is the chairperson of that board. So the board should be run for the benefit of the major shareholders of the organisation, which is everyone who lives in our LGA, including the ratepayers who provide the majority of revenue for the Shire. So to set the directions and the goals appropriately, I think it requires really clear consultation and good communication with the people of the Shire. So the mayor and the councillors should be visible, present and available to the people of the Shire. Once you've set those directions and goals, it's a responsibility of that board to monitor how the managerial staff of the council implement and resource those strategic directions, and to see how those outcomes progress.
What skills do you think you need to strategically steer an organisation like council?
I think you have to be a really good listener and have the inclination to listen to the people of the Shire. I think you need really good financial skills and business acumen to make sure that you understand the resourcing, the revenue, the outcomes. I think you need analytical skills and the ability to get things done. And I think you need good communication, as I've mentioned before, but I also think you need empathy and inclusiveness. Well, I plan to respond to Council's community vision by firstly acknowledging and paying respect and continuing to be informed by the Gumbaynggirr community vision that is so rightly embedded as part of the Bellingen Shire community vision. I think the concepts of connected, sustainable and creative really sum up well the vision at a high level, and I think there's a lot that the new refreshed council will be continue to be informed by the community vision. Obviously, it's the overarching sort of statement that directs operational plans and procedures, and also the strategic directions. I think the challenge for the incoming council will be to look at the identified priorities and the strategic directions and to see how they are implemented.
What do you think are the three key issues for Bellingen Shire Council in the next term?
Well, the three key issues I see, firstly, are optimising the revenue that we know we have, that comes from our ratepayers, and also maximising the revenue that we may be able to gain through connections with the state and federal government grants program. So that's really essential that we have great communication there to make sure we make the most of those opportunities. Secondly, I would say that, as I mentioned earlier, great communication and transparency on all council matters are imperative. And thirdly, I think water security is of vital importance. Fresh water is a basic human right, and securing that into the future needs to be one of our major goals. So in balancing my decision making and my personal issues or matters of interest, I think it's going to be very important to refer to the community vision and the other operational plans and strategies that are already in place in council. I think that's how you'll be informed as to the direction that's been set, and allow for the process of resetting that direction as a refreshed council sees as necessary. So I think there's always potential for an overlap between matters that matter to you as a resident and the decisions you have to make. So taking that on board, I think I personally will always test on each decision if there's any chance for a conflict of interest, be it pecuniary or non-pecuniary or personal or related.
So how do you see your role as a councillor, and how do you think you'd best achieve your goals?
I see my role as a councillor as an advocate for the community. I feel like I can best achieve my goals by being an independent representative of the community. And that's by not being aligned to any political parties. So I don't have to toe the party line. I can stand up for whatever the community wants, and I feel that good governance is really important in council, and I can bring that to it with other roles that I've been in the past. I've got a pretty good idea of how that works.
And how do you plan to respond to council's community vision?
Council's community vision is a huge document. I have researched it. It's really, they've done a great job with it. It's obviously been very well researched. Their vision includes resilience of people across the Shire, which is really important at the moment, considering we've had some pretty big natural disasters in the last few years, and we could have those again at any time. It includes making sure that we have sustainable growth and our environment's looked after, and that's important to everyone in the Shire. And it's also making sure that we get on with our core business of council, which is roads, bridges, sewerage, collection of rubbish, making sure the weeds are, controlled, working with groups like Local Land Services and Landcare to partner and make good decisions for the people of the Shire.
What do you think are the 3 key issues for Bellingen Shire in the next term?
I think communication is one of the key issues. Speaking to constituents all over the Shire, I feel like there's been a lack of communication, and I feel like that is something that council really needs to work on. I feel like there's been a bit of a culture issue where people feel that they're not being received well when they make inquiries, etc., to council. So leading from the top down is really important, and changes of culture need to happen from that way, not from the bottom up. I think another issue we have is growth. A lot of people see it as just housing, but I think it's growth, and growth that's sustainable, but we can see other shires around us are going ahead, and our shire is sitting here with no movement. And if we want to have housing, and we want to have ratepayers, and we want to have our roads fixed, and we want to have all the things that council are invested in, then we need some growth, and we need jobs for our youth and things like that.
And how are you going to balance your issues as a resident and your council decision-making function?
Council is a group of 6 people and a mayor. So theoretically, it's a democratic group of people, which is why I believe council needs some independence on it, so we can have some diversity in council. And obviously, once you're in the council chamber, it's a democratic process. So whatever decisions are made are the decisions that are made. So we need to go with those.
What skills do you think you need to strategically steer an organisation like council?
I think that communication is really important. Communication skills with the people that work for you, communication skills with your managers, communication skills with other stakeholders within the organisation and outside the organisation. In managing a dairy farm and managing an operating theatre, I work with lots of people all the time, and we need to make sure that all our ducks are in a row to get things done. So if everyone knows what's going on, even if you have to change the plan, then people are happy. Another skill that I have is a hard worker, and I think that sometimes you do need to do the hard yards. You need to spend the time and get the job done, and be willing to sacrifice that time for what you're doing. Honesty. I am very honest. Sometimes people don't like it. Sometimes people don't like to hear what I have to say because they don't like the hard conversations. Then I think we also need to realise that a strong HR focus needs to come in as well. Human resources are really important, and leadership needs to come from the top, not the bottom. And changes in culture and good culture are really important in organisations. The other thing that is important is an understanding of KPIs. So key performance indicators are really vitally important in most organisations, and I am aware that council is exactly the same as that, so we need to have our finger on that as well.
How do you see your role as a councillor, and how do you think you best achieve your goals?
The most important point that I want to stress as a councillor is that I am completely independent and I can think for myself. I am aiming to represent all the residents of the Shire to the best of my ability. I do not have any hidden agendas hanging over my head. I have been active in the community for any number of years, so most people know what they're going to get from me. But I do understand that I have to balance the needs of the people with the needs of the council and the legislation they have to abide by. So, in short, I want to be a conduit between the people and the council and the council and the people.
And what skills do you think you need to strategically steer an organisation like council?
Well, over the years, I have strategically steered many organisations in this valley very successfully, mainly in leadership roles. To do this, I've been able to engage with other team members. I've listened to their ideas. I've always been an active team member, and I have always approached decisions with an open mind.
How do you plan to respond to council's community vision?
By looking at the various statements on the council website, I can see that each succeeding council has had their input, but all seem to have as their focus connectedness, sustainability and creativity. I hope to enhance the feeling of connectiveness within the Shire, encourage sustainable development and look at creative ways to bring that about.
What do you think are the 3 key issues for Bellingen Shire Council in the next term?
I would dearly like to change the view that a lot of residents have of the council to a positive rather than a negative one. I would like to see sustainable expansion of the rate base so that there's more money to spend on infrastructure such as roads, bridges and perhaps the lower river sewerage scheme. And thirdly, to look at ways to enhance the sense of community within the Shire.
And how are you going to balance your issues as a resident and your council decision-making function?
Oh, I will be going into council with an open mind and very little self-interest. My main interest is the Bellingen Shire. The decisions I make will take into account as many different views as possible of the residents. My vote will be for the decisions that are in the best interests of the majority of the residents. I need to stress that I'm truly independent. My aim is to get this community working together for the benefit of all.
How do you see your role as Mayor, and how do you think you'll best achieve your goals?
Look, I see the role of the Mayor as being, and as councillors, of being the conduit between the community and council and the staff. We certainly find out what the concerns are of the community and their visions and needs, and we also then have lots of conversations and workshops with council staff about how we're doing things like waste, water, how our finances are. So we're certainly that's our role, is to talk about what we need to do together, and how we can get the best results for all the people in the Shire. Also, I think one of the really important ones is advocacy and what we do outside of the Shire to ensure that we get fairer funding, to ensure that we're getting real action on climate change, to ensure that our water is safe and secure into the future.
And what skills do you think you need to strategically steer an organisation like Council?
Look, you need people skills. You need communication skills. You need to be able to listen. You need to be able to talk to those issues. You need to be able to ensure that the right messages are getting through to the community about what we're doing, how we're doing it, how that's the best way to do it. So that's certainly a really, really strong skill is to understand how to communicate. And I think the other thing is to have that strategic mindset that you're doing things for the greater good. You've got to make sure that we're doing the best thing, getting the best value out of ratepayers' dollar.
How do you plan to respond to Council's community vision?
Look, the community vision underpins everything we do. So what we as a community want to see into the future, we've got to work towards that, and we certainly have a reporting mechanism that does that. So we know that the community really values our natural assets, for example. We know the community wants to see better roads and bridges, and we're certainly addressing that infrastructure backlog. The community wants us to advocate for them as well, around things like a fairer funding model, around climate change, around protection of all of our natural assets. We want clean rivers. We want opportunity. We want to see things like the Great Koala National Park because we know that that's going to be an economic boom for us into the future.
What do you think are the 3 key issues for Bellingen Shire in the next term?
Yeah, to nail it down to 3 is tough, but I think the 3 that really come to mind for me are, one, climate change. The impact on local government is billions and billions of dollars, and we've seen that. We've seen that with the fires that we saw in 2019. We've seen it again with the floods that we had in 2020, and we're nearly running out of water in 2019. These are all impacts. These are all scientific facts that they are part of a changing climate. So we've got to be better prepared for that stuff. We've got to be a united front, and what we're seeing in local government is over 100 local government areas across Australia have declared a climate emergency. We know that we need funding to address that. So that's, for me, is the number one issue. I think the other one in this community is housing. And whilst that's not local government's responsibility, it's our responsibility as members of this community to do what we can into the future to ensure that we take the best opportunities. So we have done things like waiver the fees on secondary dwellings. We have been part of the housing action group, the Housing Matters Action Group. From the start, we've won awards in terms of our consultation with the community about what we see into the future. So I think it's a really important issue because we are seeing people that can't afford to live in this community that have been here forever. We're seeing people that are homeless. So we absolutely want to be part of the solution. And I think the final issue is infrastructure. That's always a concern for councils. And what we're seeing is our backlog is reducing. So we are getting to that stage. We are building newer bridges. We've spent more money in the last 5 years than has been spent before. But that's a challenge because prices are going through the roof. So we've got to be more strategic about that into the future.
And how are you going to balance your issues as a resident and your council decision-making function?
Well, look, we have things like codes of conduct to ensure that that doesn't happen. But look, what I would say to you is all the councillors that I've worked for have always had, what's best for the ratepayers and what's better for the greater good always at the forefront of their mind. So I don't think that's a massive issue. But we've certainly got checks in place. All our meetings are recorded and archived. So, you can look at our annual reports. So we are scrutinised more than any other form of government. So that's certainly an easy question to answer.
How do you see your role as a councillor, and how do you think you would best achieve your goals?
Thank you, Kerry. The role of a councillor is a big question. And it's one that has taken me the best part of my 9 years of being on council to live fully into it. Because the role of a councillor, as I understand it today, is about stewardship. Of course, it's about doing things as well, but it's about stewardship, and stewardship includes this place that we call Gumbaynggirr country, that we call the Bellingen Shire, from the mountains to the sea, and everything in between. It's the stewardship for people, environment, the built environment and the natural environment. And it's taken me a while to get there, to really kind of fully live into that. I also think the role of the councillor is advocacy. So it's advocacy for the wider community on things that they think are important to them, even when the wider community can sometimes not see eye to eye about a particular matter. And then I think there's a third thing about the transfer, about the role of the councillor. And this is a really important one, because the expectation from general people within the wider community are that council can fix everything. All we need a bit more resources, we need a bit more of that if council just did it better. So what I see as the third plank of being a councillor after stewardship and advocacy is being a translator. Is sometimes translate for council what it looks like to ordinary people, what's happening, and also for ordinary people, what council's trying to achieve. The question around skills in order to steer council, I think, is an important one. But I actually think that value alignment, personal value alignment, is more important than skills. Because, to be honest, even after 9 years, when the Deputy General Manager talks about bridge loads and engineering, there's still stuff that I just do not understand. When we talk about biodiversity and we talk about water quality and sewerage count, there's stuff that I still don't understand. But if I'm bringing the right values, which are personal values, into the council space, then that's really important. But to the particular question, I think that we need to bring to skills is managing conflict. And managing conflict is internal conflict, but also conflict with other councillors. Because to be a councillor, you need to be a councillor for all, not just for the people who voted for me. Listening, humility, and inquiry. So listening is actually the ability to hear what people are saying, not pretend that we're just kind of hearing and then going on our own way. Humility is the interest that the community has here requires me to put aside my own personal perspective and really listen deeply and know that there's great wisdom in our community and within the different groups within the community. And lastly is inquiry. And inquiry to me is the ability to ask a question, to really seek an answer without thinking you know the answer. So those are some of the skills that I think that we need in as a councillor and as a council together.
And how do you plan to respond to council's community vision?
Council's community vision is something that was put together for 2027 many moons ago, and the council's community vision is a document which is aspirational and one that is also undergoing change. And the main issues that I see in that are continuing to engage with people, with places, and to develop resilience both for business, the environment, and for the people here.
What do you think are the 3 issues for Bellingen Shire's council in the next term?
The 3 key issues are transition, managing expectations, and sustainability. Transition is about a whole bunch of new councillors, new staff working together, a council for all. Managing expectations is there are many new people coming out to live in our shire. We're going to be in a post-pandemic world. They're talking about it as an endemic world of COVID. So managing expectations. And lastly is sustainability. And sustainability is our ability to continue to develop and manage this place called the Bellingen Shire, which is our home.
And finally, how are you going to balance your issues as a resident and your council decision-making function?
That's the question about balancing your own personal space with being the councillor role is over 9 years, I believe I've demonstrated that really clearly. I take advice from the senior staff about managing conflict of interest, but it comes down to three particular issues. One is good policy. So does the policy make sense? 2, is it about the greater good for all? And 3, is it transparent? Those are the issues that make for the balance between your personal space and the space of an elected councillor for all.